So now we're going to shift gears a little bit. People have talked about funding, right? We're talking about accounting, we're talking about funding, we're talking about the money to run our organizations. One of the other ways we came up with people to talk today was we got requests from our nonprofit members that said, we want to hear about fundraising. So based on the recommendations we got here in LA, Lupe Solorio, who is with Community Partners, is going to talk to us today. Community Partners is located really close by over at the California Endowment Building, and they are actually the fiscal sponsor for several different groups in this room. And Lupe works with fundraising. So here's Lupe.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Cindy, for inviting me to present to all of you. And when Cindy and I talked about, she was like, everybody's asking about fundraising, so can you come and talk about it, or do you know somebody that can talk about it? And I was like, well, I can talk about it because I do that all day, every day. So Community Partners, I'm just going to give you a brief update or description of Community Partners. Like Cindy said, we are a fiscal sponsor for nonprofits in mostly California. We have some out-of-state nonprofits, but what fiscal sponsorship is people who want to start a nonprofit come under our nonprofit status so that they're able to fundraise and implement their programs and without having to set up a whole independent nonprofit organization and do all of the administrative work that you as nonprofits have to do in order to keep complying with state and federal laws. What we also do is we're a capacity builder. We help nonprofits build their capacity. We offer expertise, guidance, essential services. Sometimes we work with nonprofits who need help with their admin and finance. And what we really want to do is just get nonprofits the support they need, because a lot of times when you're independent, you feel alone out there, like, who do I ask information about this? Sometimes you don't even know what to ask. So that's what Community Partners is there for. These are our 3 programs. Like I mentioned, fiscal sponsorship is our main program. It consists about half of our services. And then we have grant maker partnerships. So we work with foundations and their grantees to build the capacity of their nonprofits through conferences, convenings, re-granting sometimes even when they can't afford to do it on their own. We're also a thought leadership and knowledge sharing organization. We have several books that we've published. One of them is really popular, especially when you're in a network. It's Networks That Work, and that's the 3 programs. We've managed over 35 grantmaker initiatives with all these foundations, and we've managed about 140 nonprofits right now, and some of you, like City Plants, Industrial District Green is part of our fiscal sponsorship, and we have several groups who are under fiscal sponsorship. But really, what I'm here to talk to you about is fundraising, right? And how do you do that? And everybody always asks me, like, show me the money. How do I raise it? What do I do? We want to raise more money because we want to do more programming. And my inevitable question after that is, show me your friends. Like, who do you know? How do you get people there? Who's on your board? Those are my normal questions because those are the people that are supposed to be helping you fundraise, right? Everybody always forgets about their board development. Everybody forgets about, we were just talking about volunteers, right? Some of those volunteers can actually donate to you too. So I always ask that question, well, who are you connected with? If you look at the Giving USA report of last year, 71% of donations came from individuals. Now, yes, this number is a little bit skewed because you have churches and you have universities who are part of the nonprofit circle. So, people give to churches, it's individuals. But if you really look at it, only 16% of funding comes from foundations. 5% from corporations. And it's great because people want to get foundation money because it's usually a large grant. You get $10,000, $25,000. all in one lump sum, you get it. And you feel like it's easy to get because you just have to write a grant and you get the money. But only 16% of the funding comes from foundations. And many of you know that you probably get a lot of no's from foundations than yeses. So, and individuals is not easy to fundraise for, right? It means that you have to have a plan and you have to have a lot of work that you have to do behind raising money from individuals. It's not easy. But it's also unrestricted. So you can get that money, you can use it however you'd like. So individual giving is very, very important. And we talk about that with a lot of people. So as part of that, building relationships is really, really important. Friendraising is really important. That's what it is. It's like you bring individuals closer to your organization to get to know you. It makes raising money much more fun and more effective, because that's the other thing I hear from people. I hate to ask for money. Well, don't ask for money. Get to know the person. That's much easier than asking for an actual dollar amount. You'll eventually get there. You'll finally feel comfortable with someone to ask for money. It helps you get to know the individual and how else they may support the organization. So maybe it's easier for you to ask them to be a volunteer, to be on your board, and then you can convert them to be a donor later on. So my last point, convert a friend into a donor. Chris Allers talks about the 6 P's of successful fundraising. First one is learn what the passion of the person is, right? So you got to talk to them, you got to get to know them. You want to know what makes them tick, what makes them want to participate in an organization. And this goes, I think, for volunteers too. It's like you get to know them. Have a purpose for them. So once you learn what their passion is, make sure that you understand what where they could use their money to kind of ignite that passion. So what the purpose of their donation is. You also have to plan. All of this is about planning and being strategic about how you approach someone. Give them praise, about how they've donated, how they've contributed to your organization. And my favorite one is polite persistence, because I always hear, but then they say no. Well, of course they're going to say no probably the first time, but you have to continue to ask them. I once went through a fundraising academy, and I was like, the mailers that people send out with sometimes the nickel in the envelope so that you give back money. And I used to always say, why do they say nickel if they want my money, right? And why do they keep sending it to me? So I found out that persistence is what matters. That they may not give you the first time you ask them. They may not give you the second time they ask, but they will probably give you the third time. And I didn't think about it until I made a donation to another organization, and I realized, that was probably the third time they asked me. And when I guess that day, they just caught me on a good day, and I wrote a check, and I sent it in. So persistence is important. And I put polite because I know everybody feels but then I feel like I'm just, following, just being a nag, and I'm just, being annoying by asking. But persistence is really important. So that's the way to think about fundraising. You're talking to them, building that relationship with them. At Community Partners, we've created this grid to kind of help people think about, who are my friends and how should I get to know them? And we call it, instead of fundraising, we call building our civic reach. So who do I need to get to know? Who needs to get to know us? And how do I do that? So we created this kind of grid where we made different pies, and we've allocated it. You can make this however you want. This can be customized to your organization. We decided that we wanted to get to know people in the government, political and elected officials, in philanthropy, nonprofit, the corporate sector, and just small businesses, right? And the different zones mean like zone 4 is more of like, there's someone I know there, but I'm not, they don't know me, but I kind of know people in that area. Zone 3 is, we've met, but they probably won't remember me. I can probably call them and ask them. Zone 2 is like, we've had a conversation. I know I can reach them. And zone 1 is like, they'll probably reach me because we have a really close relationship with someone in that zone. So what we do is we kind of just work through this, and what we tell people is look at your network. So like who do you know in these different sectors? Who do you want to know? And then write down and be strategic about it. Write out a plan. How do you get to know someone in the business sector if you'd like? And so this is kind of how we've talked about building relationships, how we've talked about friend raising, so that we're more strategic, we're more just intentional about meeting people that we need to know. I don't know if you have any questions on this, but I've brought copies of this kind of so that you can write on. I'll leave them on the desk, and then I'll send a copy of it to Cindy so that you can all have access to it electronically. But we found it very helpful. I think what you have to just really do is stay focused on building friends, get the support, get others to do it with you. That's what your board is supposed to do that for you. And extend your reach so that you can make an impact. How many of you, when you're fundraising, think about friend raising? Very good. And how come the other ones aren't? What's the challenge for you when you think about fundraising and friend raising? What's the challenge? You just don't want to ask a friend. Yeah, you don't want to ask a friend. That's right. But define what your friends are, right? Like who's your friend and what you can do, what else are they contributing other than money, What are their challenges?
The limited number of relationships that one staff member can maintain.
Yes. The limited number of relationships one staff member can maintain. That's very true. And what do you think a solution to that is? Yes.
Assign your friends to board members.
Assign your friends to board members.
Let them maintain the relationship.
Let them maintain the relationship. Yes, this cannot be a one-person job. You have to talk about this as a group. Because all of you have board members, right? All of you have a board of directors? My question, how many of them fundraise for you? All of them. Very good. How many have 100% fundraising from their board? I only see 3 people. How many of your board members do 50% of them fundraise for you? Okay, a little more hands up. Very good. Okay, yeah. How many of you don't have any of your board members fundraising? Mm-hmm. Very normal. It happens in every organization. You're not alone. It's the one number thing that, just like you said, you hate to ask your friends, your board members hate to ask their friends, right? So it's about talking to them and being strategic. If they don't want to ask, this is one strategy. Have another person ask their friends for them. Give them a tool so that they know how to talk to their friends. So give them information. How many of you have board retreats with your board? Okay, some of you. Good. It's important to all of you be on the same page about what your organization does and what your mission is and what your strategy is. What are your strategic plan? The more information a board member has, the easier it is for them to talk about it to other people. So are they informed? Yes. Membership, yes. Yes. You can use your membership to ask to have a committee that friend raises or fundraises for you.
What about membership fees, like 3 people pay?
Yes, membership fees. He's saying, so how about membership fees? One of the things you do want to consider when you're fundraising is diversifying your funds, right? So you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket like foundation funding. You don't want to do it all in individual donations. There's fee for services, there's membership fees, there's different ways. It just depends on the structure of your organization. So you want to think about how you're structured. What are other challenges in fundraising? How many of you have asked your friends to donate to your organization? See, most of you have. Okay. How many of you have asked them to be volunteers? Aha. You weren't asking for money, so it was easier for you to ask them, right?
So if you ask them for money, then
I think,
your friends that you
yes. It's the fear of asking for money. Because all of you said you asked them to volunteer. You've already got them into your organization, so you just have to maintain that relationship. You know, giving them information about your nonprofit organization. And it doesn't necessarily need to be, you know, a face-to-face ask. You can give them a newsletter with a note that says, please donate, a little envelope that says, please donate. You know, make it, you know, have different opportunities to ask them for money. Do you have questions about fundraising?
For a breakdown of the funding, what about government and state agencies?
Ooh, that's a very good question. So government agencies, I don't know that it was on my, yeah, I don't have that information on me. I don't, yeah, it doesn't say on there.
Like this
What?
grant from the forest.
Right, yeah, and it's a pie, it's a funder, right? The government is a potential funder. The USA report, it's I'm not sure that it's in.
Program or earned income.
Right. I think this report is about contributions, about giving, as opposed to earned income. And I'm wondering if they didn't do government because some of the government, it's like the services that you provide, it's contracted. So they probably didn't include that because of that. Yeah. Yeah, and it's usually contracted services, so it's not giving in the same, yeah. It's fee for services. Right. Any questions about fundraising? Yes.
So I think for us it's a little different. For our fundraisers and all our events, we usually have our friends and our community members come out, and we love them for it and we appreciate it. But I would like to know, how do we attract a different crowd? How do we attract the spenders, the people who are willing to donate more? Specifically, you know, for our fundraisers, it's usually we get the same crowd, and we want to know how do we expand to a bigger crowd.
Very good question. So how do you expand to a different crowd? Any ideas from the crowd before I try and answer that question? Here? Yes,
Sometimes you have to buy lists.
by lists.
Infuse new people.
Okay.
That's illegal. That's your 700,000. Actually, I wanted to ask where it comes.
So by a list. Yes.
You get a half percentage.
Yeah, you'll,
You move them through.
right,
Very low. That's called
right. Yes.
Get new board members, bring new acquaintances.
Yeah, bring new board members to bring new acquaintances to the organization. All good strategies. Anything else? Social media. You know, how are you using your social media now that just, you know, kind of, you know, your friends will look at other people's pages and they can, you know, spread the word for you? What other ways? celebrities. That's a little hard though, right? Like unless you have somebody you know who knows somebody who knows somebody, bringing in a celebrity, but it can happen. Just ask, yeah. I think you need to ask everybody that's involved in your organization to spread the word for you. That's how you do it. I think we're always afraid to tell people, can you spread the word for me? Can you bring in other people to the table? I've had many times where even an executive director will not even ask their board, can you contribute 10 names to us so that we can invite them to an event? It's not even about asking for money, just inviting them to an event. People are afraid to ask that. But if you're on a board, that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be advocates and ambassadors. And you have to help them think through beyond their close friends. Most of them work somewhere. They can invite people from their work, have different circles. You know, I meet people at the gym that I sometimes don't even think about, well, they're an acquaintance. They're not a friend. I think you have to not be afraid to call them friends to you and your organization. What a friend means is that they know you and you know them, and you bring them on board because they may know other people. I'll give you one story. I had someone come to me who said, Lupe, I need your help. And I said, oh yeah, sure, what can I help you with? And she said, I met someone, actually, she goes, I didn't meet them. They're my neighbor. And they work for the Disney company. And she said that she can probably get me a $10,000 grant. I just don't know, like she asked me, what would I do with those $10,000 grants? And I never knew she worked at Disney. She was my neighbor, my next door neighbor. But we don't ask people where they work. We don't ask people like how they can contribute to your organization besides dollars. Because all we want is money, right? We need to keep running our programs. The nonprofit sector has been very complicated. I think if you're not part of the nonprofit sector, you don't realize that we have to pay salaries. We have to have the lights on. We have to have an office space. I think people still have the concept of nonprofits as charitable volunteers. We hold hands, we go, we plant the tree, and that's all there is to it. There's no other expense. People always tell me, nonprofits are not non-profit. You are a for-profit. And it's like, no, we have a mission. Yes, we have expenses, like the money that is used goes back into the organization. There's not a profit at the end of it. The profit is that we get to see a tree planted. That's our profit. So we have to think about, like changing people's mindset about what a nonprofit is and that we do have expenses that we have to pay, and charitable dollars help us do that. Any other questions before, because I know that we're probably getting close to lunch. So, any other questions? Was this helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Yes? Well, thank you very much. Is that enough?